Good afternoon. My name is Gary Saxer. I am the Chief Evangelist for Infratab, monitoring, tracking, and tracing perishable products. If you have a perishable product, food, blood, paint, glue, I've been incredibly impressed in my history with this company on how many things are perishable. But for this particular presentation, we are going to concentrate on the cold chain and food in this particular case. Our two biggest challenges right now in supply chain management are food waste and food safety. Food waste, that is, food that's getting lost, and food safety, so food that you should know whether or not you should use it. You know, we discovered long ago that our chief food scientist told me that human beings are very, very good at knowing whether milk is good or bad. Our noses can, because I asked him, the sell-by date here is, 3 days ago. He goes, if you smell it and it smells okay, it's okay. All right, but human beings, strawberries, apples, banana, now we're not as good at doing that, okay? We need some more tools in order to be able to work with that for food safety. And in addition, we want to decide when the product is usable or not to control the food waste. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, 1.4 billion tons of harvested food is lost or wasted annually. This is a change the world problem. We could feed 2 billion people just with the food that is wasted in the world today. Now, various kinds of food have various levels of food waste. You can see here dairy, for instance, as I pointed out, it's dairy, because we're so good at recognizing whether it's good or not, we know whether the food wasting is happening for dairy. Things like fruit and vegetables, though, are much harder, and so it becomes, we frequently throw away food that could be good. And when I say we, I'm talking about you and I individually, but I'm also talking about the store manager or the distribution center manager or even the maker of the food, because they are wasting food too. If they don't know it's bad, they toss it just to be safe, because we're talking about food safety here. So in North America and Europe, approximately 10% of the perishable food losses occur during the distribution phase, which is a phase I'm presuming most of you are interested in here. A chief driver of these losses is, of course, temperature and temperature abuse. Even in developed countries, using sophisticated cold chain monitoring technologies, we don't have quite the adequate tools to control what the food waste could be. In addition, this is costly, and the current technology is, well, clumsy would be my best description. The other problem we have with food safety is that we are critically challenged by today's modern perishable supply chains. And I use the word modern in quotation marks. You realize that in many ways, we are still shipping food the same way it was done 2,000 years ago. You put it on a transportation vehicle. Okay, it was an ox on a cart. Okay, you put it on a transportation and you take it someplace else, from the farm to the place you want it to go. In fact, it's really quite fascinating to me, because the major method that most people use in their methodologies for controlling food waste is to simply give you a baker's dozen of eggs, give you 13 dozen eggs, and if you find some that are bad, you say, well, I gave you some extra anyway, so you're all okay. But that ends up being wasted then. So the average food recall in the United States costs at least $10 million to the food company. This includes, of course, disposing of the product that's having to be recalled. But the other big problem has to do with the damage to the brand or even to the type of food. Spinach sales in this country are still lower than they were over a decade ago due to one recall of spinach. Consumers are still wary about spinach, and remember that recall from 10 years ago. We need some way of being able to help you mitigate this problem here. Unfortunately, controlling the risk in your own operation is not enough to protect us. Research led by Dr. Anthony Potter at Queen's Centre for Assured and Traceable Foods in Belfast identified 2,439 food recalls over the past 10 years and concluded that, and I'll quote, "While biological causes were also factors, a significant number of food safety alerts were actually due to food fraud and corruption by suppliers further down the supply chain. This highlights the need for food producers to invest in ensuring the traceability of their products back through the supply chain." Sad but true, further proving the criticality of of more reliable traceability is this. A simulation was done on the contamination of 1 day's worth of beef supply, 1 day. For this, the assumption was that after the consumer got the beef, it would have a shelf life of 14 days. If you had perfect food traceability, the amount of loss was reduced by 90%. If the amount of shelf life left was 28 days, the amount of projected loss was more than 95%. These losses can be minimized. These losses can be easily minimized here by using these tools that we have in the supply chain. Unfortunately, the technologies that are widely used today are not up to the task. Why? Well, first of all, today's perishable supply chains need better access to the critical shelf life monitoring. I'm sure that many of you are doing temperature monitoring, but temperature monitoring isn't shelf life monitoring. What you want is the answer to the question, how fresh is it? Knowing what the temperature history was, you might be able to guess at how fresh it is. But the current technology simply measures the temperature. And in fact, the current technology, sadly, is to put a temperature thermometer, up in the back of the truck where the refrigerator is. And what you then get is a log of the temperature of the refrigerator on the truck. You don't know what the strawberries are doing. You don't know if the blower was pushing. You don't get that. You need something that is closer to the actual product itself. But you also need workable solutions that are easy to integrate into your business. If you don't do that, then you simply won't adopt these particular solutions. So today's tools don't give us the perishable supply chains, the accuracy, the speed, and the access that they need. So what are we going to do about that? Well, I'm glad you asked me here today. So one widely used tool is called a temperature logger or a sensor. Now these things tend to look like USB thumb drives, and they measure the temperature every so many minutes, okay? However, that's simply historical data. There are actually companies that take more than one, the temperature loggers are already expensive as it is, they take more than one temperature logger and put it in a box, because when it gets to the distribution center, they want to know what the temperature was when it was coming along, but they want to keep measuring the temperature, so they take one of the temperature loggers out and they take it back to the computer and plug it in, and of course, I guarantee you, by that time, that pallet of grapes is down the hall and over in the refrigerator. You've lost track of what that is completely if something went wrong with that. These they get snapshots, do that. The other type of snapshot is they simply measure the pallet when it comes off the truck. They stick a temperature probe inside there. Oh yeah, that one looks okay here, and oh yeah, it looks okay. Oh yeah, this fish is just fine here. Yep, I just measured the temperature. It's just fine right there. That is the way that they do it. That is another method that they consider to be closer to the pallet. Okay? This temperature data is also generally proprietary. It is owned by the person who put it into the supply system, and therefore can't be shared with your other supply chain participants. If you want richer, more actionable data, and something else, predictive analytics, you can use integrated hardware and software solutions with real-time location, real-time temperature reporting. You'll know when things go wrong, and you can, if something does go wrong, trace it back to who did it, either to try to mitigate that problem or to get your insurance company to pay for what went wrong with that. The problem is your transportation, distribution, and retail partners are not always talking to each other. They don't invest in the same kinds of systems with each other, and they don't necessarily license the same kind of software. And then it turns out that there are individual people in this process. Now, by individual people, I mean you and I. When you walk up to the counter and get some fish, it would sure be of some interest if you knew what the temperature history of that piece of fish is you're about to buy. But there are other levels of this as well. People working in the warehouse. You say, all right, I need 3 pallets of grapes. The guy takes his forklift, he goes over there, and he just grabs the next 3 pallets of grapes he finds there. How do you know that those are the least fresh grapes? How do you know that this set of grapes in this pallet right over here are the ones you should be selling right now? You need the kind of information right down there at the level that everybody can use it. And so what's needed is a solution that goes beyond simply telling you what the current product is and the historical readings, and tells everybody how much shelf life is left. We call this Freshtime. Freshtime is a system of RFID tags that calculate and display in real time the shelf life that has been used and can help you predict what the remaining shelf life is going to be in the future. How can it do that? Okay. Well, each of these tags is programmed to know the type of a product. I describe it this way. This is the tag that I use with grapes, and then this is the tag that I use with strawberries, and this is the tag that you use with fish, and this is the tag that I use with paint. You get the point here? What you do is you customize the profile of the product into the tag so it knows what the shelf life of that product is. Now, these tags then take a temperature reading every so often. It could be 1 minute, it could be 6 minutes, it could be 3 hours. They take a measure of the shelf life, or the temperature every so often, and integrate the time and the temperature together to calculate how much shelf life has been lost as a result of that temperature reading. Okay? In addition to that, these tags offer another feature, and that is improved traceability. These tags are RFID-based tags, and you can use the RFID to improve your tracking and tracing. As a result of that, the tags give you monitoring, tracking, and tracing all together in one product, and the monitoring is done with something we call Freshtime points. So you can actually calculate the shelf life, use the in-tag traceability features, and be able to get at the history, and we make this available to all of the players in the business. These are EPC Gen 2 RFID tags, RAIN-based tags, but they can also be used with NFC, that is near field communications. So you take your phone, for instance, okay, and you tap it on there, and you can get that information. But we have other ways as well. Are we going to get a close-up on here if we can? I want you to take a look here right now. There's a button on this tag as well. And when I push that button, I want you to see the little green light flashing there, okay? That means this product is still okay. And I can press the button right there, and you see the green light on that one? That product is still okay. And we push the light there, and the light is red. This product has been temperature abused. Now this is a very, very rough estimate. You can't do this if you only have temperature history. Temperature history doesn't, well, all right, alerts can tell you. If it went up above a certain temperature for a certain amount of time, yeah, that's an alert, okay? But if it went up above alert for a certain amount of time, does that mean it's dead? If I take a thing of ice cream from a refrigerator here and walk it across the street, all right, it would take me 15 minutes to walk across the street. Would you still eat it across the street? I mean, it's been outside in the 30 degrees Celsius, 90 degree temperature, but it's still okay. The alert would go off, but as long as you eat it right now, it's still okay. You need to know what the shelf life is. You need to calculate the shelf life of the product, not just that. And we give you this individual access by products, by cases, or by entire pallets. Freshtime calculates this shelf life based on an analytical model. It's technically called the Arrhenius curve. And that analytical model specifies for that specific product, what's being tagged, what amount of spoiled stuff has happened. And we calculate this in something called points. The way points work is, if you have just cut those flowers off, it's 100 points fresh. Once it's been out for a couple of weeks, it might be down to 40 points fresh. And at the point which even pigs wouldn't eat the leftover flowers, it's 0 because there's nothing left in it. So from 100 to 0. And this calculation, remember, is done inside the tag itself so that you can get the information quickly. See, RFID is a very widely used, a great standard used throughout the world. But you can only get a tiny amount of data out of the RFID tag. I can't give you 30 days worth of temperature history like that. But I can give you the answer, is it fresh? Because it's calculated, it knows what the temperature history was. If it says no, it's not fresh, well then I'll go gather the data history and pull all the rest of that stuff out of the tag. Yes? All right. So, based on your, sorry about that, I must have touched something here. The idea of this is that you can use this information to get that particular product's quality information and also use it to manage your inventory. Rather than first in, first out, you can now do first in, least amount of shelf life out next. That's what you want to be able to do to make this work. This ends up giving you some information like this is actually a tag I was using here. So this green line is the number of shelf life points available. And you can see here, as long as the temperature is running down here about 7 or 8 degrees, everything's in Celsius, of course, it's moving along here like this. If you look carefully, you see those two little dots are really close together because something happened right there. But then it went back down to being nice and cool again, and then something happened for a little bit longer period of time here, and then the temperature got much colder, and the shelf life flattened out. The tag, inside the tag, it's keeping track of how much shelf life it is. All this information is inside the tag. But the only piece of information you need right now is how many points are left, because that tells you whether it is fresh or not. Freshtime's easy-to-use dashboards are set up, can be used to set up the tags, to read the tag status, retrieve the tag history, and also associate the tags to other things such as waybills, invoices, field pick list, advanced shipping notices, all this kind of stuff that you use here. The supply chain features include groups of tags, inspection information, handover information, digital signing, and blockchain document creation. Freshtime dashboards are multitasking and can be designed so that they can control multiple devices. They can use multiple RFID readers at one time here and can be configured to act as the master. While you're looking at this information, we could be gathering additional information for database reports and queries and alerts. We collect two types of data: temperature and temperature history information, and custody information. Each time the tag is read, the user and the location can be recorded. This is the magic of RFID that we get here, along with the temperature and data, and putting that into our cloud-based blockchain database. We can then use this technology to make an unalterable record of the chain of custody, including the time and the location and the temperature of the product. Now, to make this more usable by a wider variety, we use GS1 numbering and data standards in our tags. These are the basis for the Food Track and Trace initiative. However, we provide flexibility. If you're not a GS1 user already, we give you the capability of using some of these GS1 type capabilities without actually forcing you to join the GS1 if you want. But each one of the tags gives the different partners in the cold chains ways to manage their cold chain segment. Now, everybody has access to the temperature history and the time and the temperature alerts. For a retailer, there can be alerts about sell by a certain date. You see, if I know the Freshtime points, if I know this is strawberries, and the strawberries have 72 points, using a tiny bit of math, which I assure you your phone is completely capable of handling, okay, it can tell you sell by October 7th. It calculate the number for you. You're not guessing what the sell-by date should be. You're using the combined time and temperature history of your product to say, I know that in order to achieve the goal of having my customer be satisfied, I can calculate what the sell-by date should be. For the brand owner, there's inventory and ship-by alerts, and the transporter can get guidance about the perishable life. We've actually proposed, for instance, that when you hand off to a transporter, you can say, okay, I know this product has 87 points worth of freshness in it. When it gets to New Jersey, if it still has 84 or more points left in it, you get a bonus. Meaning, take good care of it. And if it doesn't, you get alerted right away. You know that they turned the reefer off, which is what they do. Now, as an example of this, we looked at a seafood case study. Seafood has one of the most challenging supply chains on the planet. You can smell fish and know when it's bad, but that doesn't. But once you smell it, it's bad. It's already way bad. Okay, you should not have been using it before then. Okay, and according to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, nearly 10% of all seafood harvested is lost just during the distribution phase. Even in a relatively simplified supply chain where fish is farmed in a controlled agriculture facility, and then it is taken a few hundred kilometers or miles away to be then put in a warehouse, and then from the warehouse it's then packed up and moved on to someplace else. This cold chain is difficult to process. Ideally, if you measure the temperature of the fish, you don't want it frozen, you're keeping it nice and cold there. You measure it when it arrives onto the truck, it's been nice and cold there. You measure it in the distribution warehouse, it's nice and cold there, and when it gets to the retailer checks it and says, yes, it's nice and cold there. If only that were true. Sadly, of course, this could be completely true, and they could put it on the truck at 4, but if they turn off the refrigerator, well, then up goes the temperature. Unless you're monitoring inside the truck, you don't know that happened. These guys here can leave it out on the loading dock for a little bit of time. This has happened in real life to us, okay? And the problem is one pallet can be left on the load. All the rest of them go in there. If you just sign off on the chart saying these 86 pallets all went in at 4 degrees, well, you were wrong about this one. You need the individual pallets controlled. They can get it back down to 4 so that when it goes over there, you're back there again. But this is the kind of thing that happens in this particular case in a supermarket in Greece is what we put this together here. Supermarket chain in Greece uses a large fish farming company to help them take care of this kind of stuff. And when they do that, they take the tags and they put them in the boxes with here you can see fish and tags together. Now when viewed like this box can go through a door and the RFID reader can, like that, read all the tags. You got it. Got them all. Know all that information. However, one of the other things that happens is when we're taking the stuff out of there, you need to know who's next. Well, you can take one of those packing and picking people can take their phone out, read the tag, and when they read the tag, they get the information. How many points are left in that product? They can get the information of what the history of those number of points was. And if you'd like, you're old-fashioned and you like to see what the temperature history is, I can see what the temperature history was. One tap of your phone on the tag and you get this kind of information along with some other custody information and of course the alert information about whether the temperature went up or down or not or something like that. At each of those steps, you get the capability of being able to do that. In addition, we have the button on the tag, and we also offer a QR code reader so that even if you don't have NFC or rain-based RFID, the QR code can be used to at least go back into the database and say, well, the last time we looked at this tag using RFID, what was the information about that? Listen, information that was 2 or 3 days old is better than no information at all. And that's what you get right now, just a big guess about what went on. Whereas at each step of the process, some of these people can take, in case you couldn't see my phone up close, this is a little bit better showing about what these are. How many points are available in the product, what the points history looks like. Here you can see things were being maintained properly and then something went wrong and down, down, down the product went. Here you can see a couple of different items happening here, some thresholds and stuff like here. The temperature was being nice and maintained and then suddenly it got too big. And we can also tell what the other temperature history is using the histogram. One tap of the phone and that's the information that you get out of this information. That's using the NFC based. So now the other problem, in addition to food safety, is this traceability concept, the idea of being able to track and trace it. And how do you do that right now? Well, right now they use barcodes and you use packing lists and stuff like this. The egg business is probably the biggest nightmare of any of these things. At the producer level, they create batch lots of stuff, but those get put together into cartons and some of the cartons get put together into cases. But when it gets put onto the pallet and then transported to the other spot, then they want to break the part apart because I only want stuff from your, non-GMO eggs or something like that. And you'll take any of those eggs, but they're all transported in the same thing. And right now they use an incredibly complicated set of barcodes and paper and matching numbers and stuff like that. RFID can help solve this problem. Because the custody tracking can all be done using RFID. In addition, remember what we're talking about is shelf life as well. Since we can combine the tracking and tracing of RFID with the shelf life monitoring capability, suppose, for instance, you use one of these tags on the pallet. So we have one on the entire pallet, and it's keeping track of the shelf life of these eggs. Then when you break them apart into cartons, you can take and read this. Let's suppose this tag says it's 72 points left right now. You can have this daughter tag inherit the shelf life. We know that this group of eggs was at 72, so then it can start its own individual shelf life, and these tinier tags, of course, are a little bit cheaper, and so therefore you can split them up into those cartons and allow you to be able to use that kind of information. All of this, of course, information being stored in an unalterable blockchain database record. Then, we work also, of course, with the temperature and custody data in your control documents, such as packing slips and purchase orders and invoices, and combine the information together with those. Since we're using GS1 compliant numbering and data standards, you get the flexibility and the visibility all across your chain. Freshtime challenges for today of reducing food waste and mitigating food safety risks in the perishable supply chain say that you need a flexible tool that's going to make this possible for you. What we say is our Freshtime tags can do that. Monitoring, tracking, and tracing perishable products using RAIN and NFC RFID, buttons, QR codes, it's all together there in one spot. Thank you.